Rain sliced through the night, a silver curtain over the city's forgotten veins. A stray dog, limping, its hind leg oozing blood, darted through the shadows, a small, blood-stained cloth clamped in its jaws. Its eyes, wild with purpose, caught the streetlight's flicker. She saw it from the corner of her eye, a woman whose name the world had long erased. A former spy whose instincts never dulled. Something about the dog's desperate gait, the crimson smear on the cloth, stopped her cold. This was no ordinary stray. Her heart, hardened by years of secrets, stirred. The air smelled of wet asphalt and danger. She adjusted her coat, her boots silent on the pavement, and stepped into the dog's path. The city hummed with indifference, but she felt the weight of something unspoken, a truth buried in the night, carried by a wounded creature. Why this dog? Why now? Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the pull of a mystery she couldn't ignore. The dog vanished into an alley, and she followed, her shadow merging with the dark. Each step was a choice, a descent into a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. The city's pulse faded as she trailed the dog into a maze of alleys, where rain-slicked walls seemed to whisper secrets. The creature's uneven steps, tap, drag, tap, echoed ahead, its bloodied cloth a beacon in the gloom. She moved with the precision of her old life, a shadow among shadows, her boots silent on the wet cobblestones. This was no place for the unwary. The streets here were a tangle of decay, overflowing bins, shattered glass, graffiti weeping into cracks. Even the law shunned these corners, where danger clung like damp rot. Her eyes, sharp from years of covert work, scanned for threats, her ears catching the faintest drip of water, the skitter of rats. She didn't pursue the dog with haste, she shadowed it, her instincts honed to sense what others missed. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of sodden earth and something sharper, peril, perhaps, or purpose. The dog turned down a narrower path, its pace faltering but resolute, and she followed, her fingers grazing the knife tucked in her sleeve. Not for the animal, but for whatever waited beyond. Her heart, long disciplined to stillness, quickened faintly, not fear, but the stir of a mystery she couldn't ignore. The alley tightened, its walls closing like a trap. Yet she pressed on, her breath a soft rhythm in the cold. She'd left her past behind, burned her name to ash, but this moment felt like a summons. The dog paused at a rusted gate, its nose low, sniffing, and she crouched, her gaze locked on its silhouette. The gate creaked open, revealing a courtyard choked with weeds, littered with relics of neglect. A broken chair, a child's toy, a tire half buried in mud. She hesitated, her training urging caution, but the cloth's crimson stain pulled her forward. The dog slipped through, and she followed, her shadow blending with the night. The courtyard was a silent ruin, yet the dog moved with purpose toward a dilapidated house, its windows sealed with warped boards. A faint glow leaked through the cracks, a whisper of life in a place that reeked of abandonment. Her pulse steadied, her senses straining for clues. The dog scratched at the door, its whine low, urgent. She approached, her steps feather-light, her mind cataloging details, the sagging roof, the absence of adult voices, the faint hum of something alive within. Her hand brushed the doorframe, rough and damp, and she felt it, a pull, not just from the dog, but from something deeper, older. She'd walked away from missions, from meaning, but this path was different. The dog glanced back, its eyes catching hers, and for a moment, she was no longer a ghost. She was here, called by a creature that refused to be ignored, leading her to a truth hidden in the dark. The house stood like a forgotten sentinel, its walls sagging under the weight of time, rain pooling in the crevices of its broken roof. The dog, its bloodied cloth still clenched in its jaws, scratched at the door, its movements urgent, deliberate. She paused in the courtyard shadows, her eyes tracing the structure's outline, windows sealed with splintered boards. Yet a faint glow slipped through, fragile as a secret. The air carried a stale bitterness, a mix of damp rot, and something alive, something hidden. Her instincts, sharpened by years in the field, hummed with caution, but the dog's insistence pulled her closer. Then she heard it, a sound so soft it nearly dissolved in the drizzle, a child's voice, weaving a lullaby, its notes broken, hesitant, as if afraid of being overheard. Not the steady cadence of an adult, but the trembling melody of someone small, vulnerable. Her breath caught, a rare crack in her disciplined calm. She'd faced danger in countless forms, but this sound stirred something deeper, a memory of her own long-buried fears. She crept nearer, her boots silent on the uneven ground, her senses straining. The dog pressed its nose to the door, its whine low, almost pleading. The glow from the house pulsed faintly, a heartbeat in the dark. She knelt beside the animal, her fingers brushing the cloth. Its crimson stain stark against the grime. This was no coincidence. The dog had led her here, to this place of whispers and light. Her training urged her to retreat, to assess, but her heart, stirred by that fragile song, pushed her forward. The lullaby faltered, replaced by a hushed murmur, not words but a tone. Fearful, guarded, like a secret shared in the dead of night. She pressed her ear to the wall, the wood cold and rough against her skin. The voice came clearer now, a child's, singing to soothe, to survive. Her pulse quickened, not from threat, but from the weight of discovery. This house wasn't empty. It held life, fragile and fierce. The dog pawed at the door again, its eyes meeting hers, urging her to act. She studied the structure, noting the boarded windows, the absence of adult voices, the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. Her mind cataloged details, escape routes, potential threats, but her focus stayed on that voice. Its melody a thread connecting her to something she hadn't felt in years, purpose. She tested the door, her touch light, finding it unlatched. The dog slipped forward, and she followed, her heart a quiet drum in her chest. The glow inside flickered, casting shadows that moved like ghosts. She wasn't just entering a house. She was crossing a threshold, drawn by a sound that refused to be ignored. The dog's tail brushed her leg, a reminder of why she was here. Whatever lay beyond, it was no accident. It was a call, and she was answering. The door yielded with a low groan, exhaling a cloud of acrid smoke that stung her eyes. The dog slipped inside, its bloodied cloth trailing like a flag of surrender, and she followed, stepping into a dim chamber where shadows clung to the walls. A single candle flickered on a crate, its light barely piercing the haze. By a makeshift hearth, a girl no older than 10 knelt, her thin hands feeding twigs to a smoldering fire, its crackle the only sound breaking the stillness. The air was thick with the scent of charred wood and damp decay, a bitter tang that spoke of survival, not comfort. In the corner, for smaller figures huddled, their faces streaked with grime, hair knotted, eyes hollow yet sharp, watching her like prey sensing a hunter. The dog padded to the girl, dropping the cloth at her feet, its whine soft but urgent. The woman paused, her senses mapping the room, peeling paint. A sagging ceiling, broken glass glinting in the gloom. This was their refuge, a fragile fortress against a world that had turned its back. She eased forward, her movements deliberate, as if approaching a fragile creature. The girl by the fire froze, her hands trembling, the twig she held snapping in her grip. The candle's glow caught the fear in her eyes, not just of a stranger, but of something deeper, older. The woman knelt, keeping her distance, her gaze soft but steady. The other children, pressed together like a single being, stared, their breath shallow, their clothes threadbare patches stitched with desperation. The youngest, a boy no more than 5, clutched a tattered blanket, his face a mask of quiet resignation. How long had they lived like this? Scavenging in the dark, hiding from eyes that saw them as nothing? The woman's heart, trained to stay silent, ached with a familiar pain. She'd known that kind of invisibility, had carried it since childhood. The dog nudged the girl's hand, its warmth a bridge between them, and the woman saw the cloth again, its crimson stains a silent cry for help. The room felt alive with unspoken stories, each crack in the wall a testament to their endurance. The girl's hands moved again, feeding the fire, her movements mechanical.
As if survival had become her only language, the woman's eyes trace a scene. The candle's wavering light, the children's wary gazes, the dog's steadfast presence. This wasn't just a hideout.
It was a sanctuary, fragile and fierce. She felt the weight of their existence, the years etched in their small frames, and knew she'd crossed a threshold. The dog whined again, its eyes meeting hers, urging her to see what it had carried her to. The girl looked up, her face caught between defiance and exhaustion, and the woman knew. Whatever truth lay here, it was heavier than the smoke, deeper than the dark, and she was meant to find it. The girl by the fire stood, her small frame a shield between the stranger and the huddled children behind her. Her eyes, sharp with suspicion, locked onto the woman's. "Are you police?" she asked, her voice a brittle whisper, trembling not with hunger's ache, but with a deeper dread, one carved by betrayal, by hands that had torn her world apart. The woman knelt, her movements slow, deliberate, her palms open in a gesture of peace honed in places where trust was a rare currency. The dog, sensing the tension, nudged her hand, its warm tongue grazing her fingers, a quiet endorsement in the smoky gloom. The woman's gaze softened, but her voice was steady, low as a prayer. "I'm not here to harm you," she said, her words careful, chosen to pierce the girl's guarded heart. The other children, pressed together in the shadows, watched, their breaths shallow, their eyes wide with a fear that spoke of more than want. It spoke of loss, of systems that had failed them. The girl's stance didn't waver, but her eyes searched the woman's face, seeking a lie and finding none. The dog whined softly, its tail brushing the girl's leg, and she glanced at it, her resolve softening, just a fraction. The woman saw it, the weight of responsibility in her small shoulders, the way she bore the burden of protector. "What's your name?" the woman asked, her tone gentle, like a lullaby meant to soothe. The girl hesitated, her lips parting as if the act of sharing her name was a surrender. "Lila," she finally whispered, the word fragile, a gift offered with caution. The woman nodded, holding the name like a treasure, knowing trust was earned, not taken. The dog pressed closer to Lila, its warmth a bridge between them, and the woman saw the other children relax, their shoulders loosening, their eyes less guarded. They weren't just surviving. They were guarding a wound, one the woman recognized from her own childhood, when no one had come for her. She glanced at the dog, its bloodied cloth now a crumpled heap by the fire, and felt the weight of its journey, of hers. "I followed him," she said, nodding toward the animal. "He led me to you." Lila's eyes flickered to the dog, then back, a spark of understanding passing between them. "He's hurt," Lila said, her voice barely audible, "but he always comes back." The woman nodded, her heart stirring with a pain she'd long buried. These children weren't hiding from poverty alone. They were hiding from a world that had betrayed them, that had taken their families and left them invisible. She extended her hand, not reaching, just offering, and the dog licked it again, its trust a quiet plea. Lila's fingers twitched, as if wanting to reach back, and the woman knew. This moment, fragile as the candle's flame, was the beginning of something new, something that could heal them all. Lila's voice, soft as the candle's flicker, wove a tale of survival that filled the smoky room. The woman sat on the cold floor, the dog's head resting against her knee, its steady breathing a quiet anchor. Lila spoke for the group, her words halting but heavy with truth. Their parents, migrant workers chasing fragile dreams, had been swept away, some by deportation, others by illness or despair. The children, left behind, had no papers, no names in any ledger, no one to claim them. They'd learned to live on the edges, gathering scraps from market bins, sipping rainwater from cracked pipes. Their existence erased by a world that looked away. The woman listened, her face still, but her heart churned, stirred by memories of her own childhood, when she too had been unseen. She'd navigated war zones, betrayed allies, but this quiet suffering, borne by children, cut deeper than any mission's failure. Lila spoke of a man they called Uncle, not kin but a savior, who'd found them in alleys and empty lots. He'd brought them here, to this crumbling shelter, teaching them to hide, to survive. He'd shared his food, his warmth, until the cold claimed him one winter night, leaving them with only the dog and his whispered promise someone would come. The woman's fingers tightened around the bloodied cloth, its weight a testament to his final act. She asked gentle questions, how they ate, how they slept, and Lila described their days. Dawn raids on garbage heaps, nights spent singing to drown out fear. The younger children nodded, their eyes softening as they saw the woman wasn't here to take them away. The dog stirred, its nose brushing Lila's hand. And the woman saw it. A bond forged in desperation, a lifeline to a man now gone. She'd known men like Uncle, souls who carried light into the darkest corners, only to be extinguished. Her past, buried under layers of secrecy, surfaced briefly, a girl waiting for rescue that never came. But she was here now, drawn by the dog, by fate. Lila's voice faltered, describing Uncle's last days. His hands trembling as he tied the cloth to the dog's collar. He said it would find someone, she whispered, her eyes on the animal, then on the woman. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their shared loss. The woman didn't offer false promises, only her presence, her willingness to hear. The children's faces, once guarded, opened slightly, their trust fragile but growing. She looked at the dog, its eyes steady, and felt the weight of their story settle in her chest. This wasn't just survival. It was defiance, a refusal to vanish. The candle burned low, casting long shadows, and she knew. She was here to carry their story forward, to make their invisible lives seen. The candle's dim glow caught the frayed fabric around the dog's neck, revealing a strip of cloth stitched with uneven, heartfelt words, "Save the kids if I die." The woman held it to the light, her fingers tracing the clumsy threads, each stitch a testament to a dying man's resolve. Uncle, the children's protector, had left this message, his final act woven into the dog's collar. The animal lay beside Lila, its eyes steady despite its wounded leg, watching her with a quiet intensity that felt almost human. This was no stray, it was a courier, carrying a plea across the city's shadows to find her. The woman's heart, hardened by years of covert work, stirred with recognition. She'd known missions where trust was a gamble, where every ally could turn traitor. Yet this creature, battered but unyielding, had chosen her to finish what Uncle began. Lila's small hand rested on the dog's flank, her gaze fixed on the cloth, as if it held the last piece of the man who'd been their shield. The woman asked about Uncle, her voice soft, coaxing memories from Lila's hesitant lips. He'd been a wanderer, a soul with no home, but a heart too vast for the streets. He'd found the children one by one, teaching them to read by firelight, to trust the dog when danger loomed. When he died, frozen in an alley, the dog became their guardian, stealing scraps, barking at threats, guiding them through the city's maze. The woman's fingers lingered on the cloth, its message a vow she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. She'd walked away from her old life, from the agency's cold calculations, but this felt like a mission meant for her. The dog's eyes met hers, a silent pact, and she saw Uncle in them. His hope, his sacrifice, his refusal to let the children fade into oblivion. Lila's voice trembled as she spoke of the dog's loyalty, how it returned each night, even when hunger or cold threatened to claim it. The other children nodded, their faces softened by the telling, their trust in the woman growing like a fragile vine. She looked at them, Lila, Eli, the others, each a testament to Uncle's love, each a reason she was here. Her past, a tapestry of secrets and loss, flickered in her mind. She'd been a child once, waiting for someone to see her. Now, she was that someone, drawn by a dog that refused to fail. The candle wavered, casting long shadows, and the woman felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest. This dog wasn't just a witness. It was a bridge, linking Uncle's last wish to her own buried heart. She tucked the cloth into her pocket, a silent promise to carry it forward, to make these children's lives matter in a world that had forgotten them. A sharp thud shattered the fragile quiet, the door trembling under heavy fists. The children froze, their eyes wide with terror, as Lila pulled Eli closer, her small body a shield. The woman's instincts surged, her hand instinctively finding the knife in her sleeve, her body low to the ground. "Stay still," she mouthed, her voice a mere breath, barely audible over the dog's low growl. The animal's hackles rose, but she hushed it with a gentle touch, her eyes darting to the shadows for cover. Voices outside, gruff, impatient, cut through the night. "Open the door. We know you're hiding them." They called themselves landlords, their words dripping with greed, suspecting the house concealed undocumented souls, children with no names, no rights. The woman's mind raced. calculating outcomes. If these men found the children, they'd be torn apart, sent to camps, scattered, lost forever. She slipped behind a tattered curtain, its fabric damp with mildew, and signaled Lila to keep the others quiet. The girl nodded, her face pale but resolute, her hand gripping Eli's to still his trembling. The door rattled again, the wood creaking under the assault, threatening to give way. The woman's heart, trained to remain steady, pulsed with urgency, not for herself, but for the small lives huddled in the corner. The candle's flame flickered, casting jagged shadows, amplifying the children's fear, a tangible force pressing against her. She scanned the room, her training mapping every detail, the boarded windows, the single exit, the fragility of their sanctuary. The men's voices grew louder, their boots scraping the courtyard stones, their flashlights slicing through the cracks in the walls. Lila's eyes met hers, a silent plea for salvation, and the woman felt the weight of Uncle's message, still tucked in her pocket. Save the kids. She couldn't fail them, not now. The dog pressed against her leg, its warmth grounding her, a reminder of why she was here. The pounding intensified, each blow a countdown to disaster. She gestured to the children, her hand steady, urging absolute silence. Their wide eyes followed her, trusting her in this moment of peril. The men shouted again, their words laced with threats, accusing the house of harboring illegals, their greed masked as authority. The woman's mind flicked to her past, missions where seconds meant survival, where deception was her shield. She couldn't fight them head-on, not without risking the children. Her fingers brushed the curtain, her body poised, ready to act. The tension was a living thing, coiling tighter with each thud. She needed time, a distraction, a way to protect this fragile haven. The dog's eyes locked on hers, its trust unwavering, and she knew this was her mission now, not for glory, but for them. The pounding paused, the men's voices fading slightly, but the threat lingered, a shadow waiting to strike. She held Lila's gaze, a silent vow passing between them. She would not let these children be taken. With the men's threat lingering like smoke, the woman worked swiftly, her movements precise as dawn's first light crept toward the horizon. The children watched, their eyes wide but trusting, as she knelt beside the dog, bandaging its wounded leg with supplies from her pack. Her phone, still warm from the coded message, held a lifeline to a past she'd buried. She'd contacted a small NGO, a group she'd once pulled from danger in a mission long forgotten by all but its leader. Now, she called in that debt, her voice over the secure line cold yet earnest. 5 children, no papers. Give them names, a home, a school. Not for them. Do it for my honor. The reply was swift, a promise of a van at dawn, false identities, a path to safety. The woman's gaze swept the room, mapping their escape through alleys she'd traced following the dog, avoiding the city's watchful eyes. Lila gathered their meager belongings, a torn book, a chipped cup, a blanket stitched with care, her hands steady despite her youth. The woman explained the plan, her voice calm, clear, like a beacon in the dark. We move together, quietly. The dog comes too. Lila nodded, her small frame bearing the weight of a protector, guiding the younger ones. Eli, clutching his blanket, and the others, their faces soft with hope. The woman checked her watch, the minutes ticking toward their departure. She'd mapped the route in her mind, a labyrinth of backstreets where shadows were allies. Her training, once used to vanish alone, now served to shield these fragile lives. She spoke to them softly, not of promises, but of courage, weaving tales of escapes she'd heard, stories that made the impossible feel near. The children listened, their fear easing, their eyes brightening in the candle's waning glow. She bandaged the dog's leg tighter, its tail thumping faintly, a sign of trust that anchored her. Lila helped Eli tie his shoes, her movements practiced, maternal, and the woman's heart ached. She'd known that role, a child forced to grow too soon. The van would meet them in a nearby lot, hidden from the men who'd return with dawn's light. She checked her phone again, the NGO's confirmation steadying her resolve. The children needed more than a night's reprieve. They needed a future, one she'd carve out with the precision of her past. The dog's eyes met hers, its warmth a reminder of Uncle's plea, stitched into the cloth she carried. She wasn't just saving them. She was honoring a debt to a world she'd once turned away from. The room grew quiet, the children ready, their small hands clutching their possessions. Lila's gaze held hers, a silent pact forged in these fleeting hours. The woman stood, her shadow long in the dim light, her mind clear. She'd lead them out, not as a hero, but as someone who'd once been unseen. Now seeing them. The dawn was close, the air heavy with possibility, and she felt it, a purpose, fragile but fierce, guiding her forward. With the men's threat lingering like smoke. The woman worked swiftly, her movements precise as dawn's first light crept toward the horizon. The children watched, their eyes wide but trusting, as she knelt beside the dog, bandaging its wounded leg with supplies from her pack. Her phone, still warm from the coded message, held a lifeline to a past she'd buried. She'd contacted a small NGO, a group she'd once pulled from danger in a mission long forgotten by all but its leader. Now, she called in that debt, her voice over the secure line cold yet earnest. 5 children, no papers. Give them names, a home, a school. Not for them. Do it for my honor. The reply was swift, a promise of a van at dawn, false identities, a path to safety. The woman's gaze swept the room, mapping their escape through alleys she'd traced following the dog, avoiding the city's watchful eyes. Lila gathered their meager belongings, a torn book, a chipped cup, a blanket stitched with care, her hands steady despite her youth. The woman explained the plan, her voice calm, clear, like a beacon in the dark. We move together, quietly. The dog comes too. Lila nodded, her small frame bearing the weight of a protector, guiding the younger ones. Eli, clutching his blanket, and the others, their faces soft with hope. The woman checked her watch, the minutes ticking toward their departure. She'd mapped the route in her mind, a labyrinth of backstreets where shadows were allies. Her training, once used to vanish alone, now served to shield these fragile lives. She spoke to them softly, not of promises, but of courage, weaving tales of escapes she'd heard, stories that made the impossible feel near. The children listened, their fear easing, their eyes brightening in the candle's waning glow. She bandaged the dog's leg tighter, its tail thumping faintly, a sign of trust that anchored her. Lila helped Eli tie his shoes, her movements practiced, maternal, and the woman's heart ached. She'd known that role, a child forced to grow too soon. The van would meet them in a nearby lot, hidden from the men who'd return with dawn's light. She checked her phone again, the NGO's confirmation steadying her resolve. The children needed more than a night's reprieve. They needed a future, one she'd carve out with the precision of her past. The dog's eyes met hers, its warmth a reminder of Uncle's plea, stitched into the cloth she carried. She wasn't just saving them. She was honoring a debt to a world she'd once turned away from. The room grew quiet, the children ready, their small hands clutching their possessions. Lila's gaze held hers, a silent pact forged in these fleeting hours. The woman stood, her shadow long in the dim light, her mind clear. She'd lead them out, not as a hero, but as someone who'd once been unseen. Now seeing them. The dawn was close, the air heavy with possibility, and she felt it, a purpose, fragile but fierce, guiding her forward. The van's headlights pierced the pre-dawn mist, a quiet beacon in the alley's hush. The NGO team moved with practiced care, their faces kind yet focused, ready to spirit the children to safety. The woman stood by Lila, her presence a steady anchor as the children clutched their sparse belongings, a tattered book, a chipped mug, a blanket worn thin. Lila held Eli's hand, her eyes searching the woman's face, seeking a promise beyond words. The dog, its leg now bandaged, pressed against her side, its warmth a silent vow of loyalty. The team leader, a woman with silver-streaked hair, nodded to her, a debt repaid without questions. The children hesitated, their feet rooted to the cracked floor of their fragile sanctuary, as if leaving meant surrendering the only home they'd known. Lila's gaze flickered to the van, then back, her small frame tense with the weight of their future. The woman knelt, her eyes level with Lila's, her voice soft but unyielding. "You're going somewhere safe," she said, her words a gentle thread weaving trust. Lila's lips trembled, and she whispered, "You won't leave us, will you?" The question hung, heavy with the fear of abandonment, a scar from a world that had already taken too much. The woman's heart, long guarded, cracked open. She placed her hand on Lila's, her touch warm, deliberate. "I was once a child no one found," she said, her voice a quiet confession. "Now you're found. You'll be seen." Lila's eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a fragile hope. And she squeezed the woman's hand, a silent thank you forged in the night's trials. The children moved toward the van, their steps slow, reluctant. Eli clung to his blanket, his small face turned back, as if memorizing the woman who'd become their shield. The dog followed, its tail brushing Lila's leg, its presence a bridge between their past and this new beginning. The team helped them climb aboard, their hands gentle, their voices low. Lila paused at the door, her fingers grazing the woman's arm, a final tether to the one who'd answered their silent cry. The woman nodded, her gaze steady, holding Lila's until the van's door slid shut. The engine hummed, the taillights fading into the mist, carrying the children to a life she'd never had. She stood alone in the alley, the air cool and still, the weight of their trust heavy in her chest. The dog remained, its eyes fixed on her, a quiet companion in the dawn's first light. She didn't weep. Her tears had dried long ago, but a warmth stirred within her, a pride born of giving them a chance. The alley, once a labyrinth of fear, felt lighter now, its shadows softened. She turned to leave, her boots whispering on the cobblestones, carrying her back to the life she knew. But something had shifted. She wasn't just a shadow anymore. She'd given them a future, and in doing so, had found a piece of her own. The van's hum dissolved into the dawn's quiet, leaving the woman alone in the alley, the dog at her side. Its bandaged leg rested lightly on the cobblestones, its eyes bright despite the night's toll. She knelt, her fingers brushing the frayed cloth still tucked in her pocket. Its stitched plea, "Save the kids if I die," a weight she now carried. The dog's gaze held hers, steady, knowing, as if it bore the soul of the man who'd sent it. She whispered, "You're his last partner, aren't you?" Her voice, soft as the morning mist, carried a grief she hadn't named in years. As she adjusted the cloth, a small photograph slipped free, its edges worn, its surface creased by time. She caught it before it touched the ground, holding it to the faint streetlight. Her breath stilled. The man in the image was Uncle, his face etched with kindness, his arm around a younger her partner from a mission that had ended in betrayal and fire. They'd been spies together, bound by trust in a world of shadows, until a failed operation tore them apart. She'd thought him dead, his name buried with her past, but he'd lived, saving these children where she'd retreated into silence. The dog whined, its nose brushing her hand. And she saw it now. The animal was his final act, a bridge between her old wounds and this new purpose. Her fingers trembled, tracing his face in the photograph. A man who'd carried light into the dark long after she'd abandoned it. She'd walked away from that life, believing she could outrun regret, but he'd found her through this dog, through these children. The mission hadn't ended. It had transformed, leading her here, to this alley, to this moment of reckoning. The dog's warmth pressed against her, its loyalty a mirror to his. She tucked the photograph back into the cloth, her heart heavy but alive, stirred by a truth she hadn't sought. Uncle had saved the children, and in doing so, had saved a part of her, the part that still believed in redemption. The alley, once a maze of fear, felt different now, its shadows softened by the dawn's first glow. She stood, the dog rising with her, its limp less pronounced, as if it too felt the burden lift. She didn't look back at the house. It was empty now, its heart carried away in that van. Her boots whispered on the stones as she walked into the light, the dog at her side, a quiet companion in a world she'd once forsaken. The photograph burned in her pocket, a reminder of a bond she'd thought lost. She wasn't just a ghost anymore. She was a witness, carrying his legacy forward. The children were safe, their futures fragile but possible, because she'd answered a call she hadn't expected. The dog's tail brushed her leg, and she felt it, a connection, not just to Uncle, but to the girl she'd been, the one who'd waited for someone to see her. Now, she'd seen them, and that was enough. She walked the alley's quiet length, the dog's steady steps beside her. its bandaged leg a testament to their shared journey. The city stirred, oblivious to the small miracle woven in its shadows. She'd lived as a ghost, her name erased, her past a vault of secrets, believing redemption was beyond her reach. Yet tonight, she'd learned salvation wasn't a grand act but a quiet choice, to follow a wounded creature, to see the unseen. The children, now safe, carried futures she'd helped shape, their faces etched in her mind. Her heart, once locked tight, softened, its faint warmth a spark kindled by their trust. She'd been a child once, invisible, waiting for a hand that never came. Now, she'd been that hand, and the weight of it felt like grace. The world holds countless hidden souls, their cries carried by silent messengers. A dog, a whisper, a stranger's glance. Redemption doesn't demand heroics. It asks for courage to act when one life stands before you. A single step, a moment's choice, can pull someone from the dark. She looked at the dog, its eyes bright in the dawn, and saw Uncle's legacy, a reminder that small acts ripple forever. Embrace those signs others overlook. They lead to truths that transform. Join the Shadow Archives, a tapestry of stories about quiet deeds that echo through time. Share your own tale, listen to others, and let the world know no one is too small to be seen.